Do I have a Bernie Sanders impersonation? No. Well, millionaires and billionaires. Huh? He's running again.
I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president.
The he there is, of course, Bernie Sanders, who went from who to who la la in the course of his 2016 challenge to Hillary Clinton for the Democratic presidential nomination. Now, Sanders is back for a second try at that brass ring, and his calculation is relatively simple. No one thought I had any chance of winning in 2016, and I darn near beat the most powerful non-incumbent frontrunner in the history of modern American politics. Well, true. Now people know me and like me, and I'm running from the front of the pack. So this all should be much easier. Sanders is right about part of that. People do know him, and Democrats at least like him a lot. A Monmouth University poll released in early February showed almost 7 in 10 Democrats had a favorable opinion of Sanders, while just 19% had an unfavorable opinion. And Sanders trailed only former Vice President Joe Biden in the 2020 ballot test in that same poll. Sidebar and weird, another person who seems to like Sanders is Donald Trump.
But I like Bernie because he is one person that, on trade, he sort of would agree on trade. What happened to Bernie Sanders 4 years ago was quite sad as it pertains to our country. So we'll see how he does.
Trump repeatedly praised Sanders during the 2016 race and said he was a victim of an establishment conspiracy aimed at electing Clinton.
Because they didn't treat Bernie right. They didn't treat him right. I mean, I don't know Bernie. I don't know him. I never met him. But they didn't treat him right.
Now back to Democrats. They aren't just saying they like and support Sanders, they're actually digging into their wallets to show that support. In his first 24 hours as a candidate, Sanders raised nearly $6 million from more than 200,000 individual donors, which is remarkable. Remember though, how I said Sanders was right about only part of his analysis, that he could simply recreate his 2016 campaign in 2020, but this time wind up, in first place. Here's several things that make 2020 a different race for the burn. The most obvious difference is that the 2020 field is already big and is going to keep getting bigger. Whereas the 2016 race only really had Sanders and Clinton in it, sorry Martin O'Malley, the 2020 slate of Democrats could number, and I'm not kidding here, in the dozens, cheaper by the dozens. Ugh. The problem for Sanders is not that there are so many candidates, really, but that so many of the candidates are vying for his slot as the liberal champion in the race. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and more are all trying to be the candidate who liberals fall in love with. That, of course, is what Sanders is trying to do too, which means he's going to have a lot more competition for that ideological space in 2020 than he did in 2016. Now then there's the fact that the Democratic Party of 2020 is going to look different than the Democratic Party of 2016. The Democratic Party is getting less white, younger, and more female. Now, anyone who paid attention to the 2018 election could see that clearly. Women delivered Democrats the House majority, both as candidates and voters. And some of the biggest stars of the 2018 election were younger black candidates like Andrew Gillum in Florida and Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Now, does this younger, more diverse Democratic Party want to nominate a 77-year-old white man as its standard bearer? And last, but certainly not least, is this fact. Bernie Sanders isn't, technically speaking, a Democrat at all. Yes, he ran as one in 2016, but as he himself admitted, he did that because he didn't think a third-party presidential bid was viable. And I'm quoting Sanders, "The bolder, more radical approach is obviously running outside of the two-party system," he told The Nation magazine way back in 2014. Do people believe at this particular point that there is the capability of starting a third-party movement, or is that an idea that is simply not realistic at this particular moment in history? End quote. In all of Sanders' previous races, for mayor of Burlington, Congress, and for Senate, he ran as an independent. And he has long said he identifies himself as a democratic socialist. So after Sanders ran for and lost the Democratic nomination for president in 2016, he unaffiliated with the Democratic Party and went back to being an independent. Quote, "I am an independent, and I have always run in Vermont as an independent while I caucus with the Democrats in the United States Senate," Sanders said in 2017. "That's what I've been doing for a long time, and that's what I'll continue to do." And that's what he did. He ran and won easily as an independent in 2018 for the Senate and went right back to caucusing with the Democrats in the Senate when he came back to Washington earlier in 2019. Now in 2016, the fact that Sanders was a Democrat for convenience never was much of an issue. Clinton ignored Sanders for, honestly, most of the race, and when she did attack him, it was on his voting record on guns and how his support for a single-payer healthcare system could mess up the Affordable Care Act. She didn't talk a lot about his party affiliation. But in 2020, voters will have to ask themselves this question. With lots of people running for the Democratic nomination who have been lifelong Democrats, is it worth voting for a guy who, by his own admission, is taking on the cloak of being a Democrat because he knows he can't win as an independent candidate for president? It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Democratic voters don't care. Maybe they dated Bernie in 2016, but are going to marry him, politically speaking, in 2020. But count me as skeptical. It's hard to find lightning in the same bottle twice. And that is the point. We make New Point episodes twice a week, every week. Check out hot, fresh political content every Tuesday and Thursday.